Hidden interracial celebrity couples, the shocking truth behind their relationships. Interracial love in Hollywood has never been just about romance. It has always carried consequences. Some of the most famous couples you thought you knew were once hidden attacked or quietly punished for crossing racial lines. Careers were stalled, lives were threatened, and silence became a survival tool. These stories were not accidents of fame. They were reflections of America itself. And the uncomfortable truth is much of that tension still exists today. Stay with Legends of Black Excellence as we uncover what was hidden, what was endured, and what still demands honesty. Subscribe, comment, and ask yourself, are we really ready for these truths? Sammy Davis Jr. and May Britt. When Sammy Davis Jr. fell in love with Swedish-born actress May Britt, the story was never just about two people finding happiness. It became a confrontation with the moral contradictions of mid-20th century America. Davis was not only a world-famous entertainer, but also a black man navigating an industry and a country built on racial separation. Britt, a white European actress working in Hollywood, entered a relationship that would permanently alter both of their lives. Their marriage in 1960 occurred at a time when interracial unions were still illegal in 31 U.S. states. This was not a symbolic number, it represented real legal danger. The couple faced public condemnation, professional retaliation, and direct political pressure. Members of President John F. Kennedy's circle reportedly urged Davis to downplay or abandon the relationship, fearing backlash from segregationist voters. For an entertainer whose career depended on public approval, the risk was immense. Davis paid a steep price. Concert bookings disappeared. Television appearances declined. Even within Hollywood, doors quietly closed. Britt also suffered consequences, including stalled acting opportunities and social isolation. Their love, instead of being celebrated, became a burden both were forced to carry in silence. Would you have chosen love knowing it could cost you your career and safety? Despite the hostility, Davis refused to deny his marriage. He publicly acknowledged Britt as his wife, an act that at the time required extraordinary courage. His defiance was not loud or theatrical, it was simply consistent. By continuing his work raising a family and refusing to apologize, Davis exposed the cruelty of the system around him. Their relationship revealed that racism did not only target the powerless, it punished anyone who crossed its invisible lines. The emotional toll, however, was undeniable. The constant scrutiny combined with the pressures of fame and addiction struggles strained the marriage. In 1968, the couple divorced. Their separation did not mean failure. It reflected the unbearable weight placed on a relationship forced to function as a social battleground. Love alone could not neutralize an entire culture's hostility. Yet history has been kind to their story. Today, Sammy Davis Jr. and May Britt are remembered not as a scandal but as pioneers. Their marriage preceded the Loving v. Virginia Supreme Court ruling by 7 years, making them part of the cultural shift that helped normalize interracial relationships in America. What once threatened to destroy careers is now recognized as an act of quiet resistance. The truth behind their relationship is not shocking because it was forbidden, but because of what it revealed. Their love exposed how fragile social rules become when challenged by genuine human connection. Long after headlines faded, their courage left a permanent mark on American cultural history. David Bowie and Iman. When David Bowie and Iman married in 1992, the world expected spectacle. What it got instead was restraint. At the height of global fame, Bowie as a shape-shifting musical icon and Iman as one of the most recognizable black supermodels in history, they made a deliberate decision to live quietly. That choice in itself became one of the most radical aspects of their relationship. Iman, born in Somalia and raised partly in Egypt and Kenya, entered the fashion industry carrying the weight of racial stereotypes. She was frequently labeled exotic, a term she openly rejected for reducing her identity. Bowie, meanwhile, had spent decades challenging norms of gender sexuality and artistic expression. Yet when it came to marriage, they rejected performance entirely. No public scandals, no oversharing, no carefully curated celebrity drama. Their wedding took place in Florence, Italy, far from Hollywood's gaze. At the time, interracial marriages were legally accepted in the United States, but social comfort lagged behind the law. In the early 1990s, such unions were still uncommon among A-list celebrities, and media coverage often fixated on race rather than compatibility. Bowie and Iman refused to engage with that narrative. They rarely appeared together at industry events and gave few joint interviews. Instead, they built a domestic life in New York City. Friends described their home as calm, intellectual, and grounded. Bowie stepped back from constant touring, later admitting that family had become his priority. Iman, who had been one of the highest-paid models of the 1980s, transitioned into entrepreneurship and philanthropy, including advocacy work focused on global health and children's rights. Their marriage lasted 24 years until Bowie's death in 2016, a length of time that quietly dismantled the stereotype that interracial relationships in the public eye are unstable. During Bowie's final illness, the couple shielded their family from media intrusion. His passing revealed just how successful they had been at keeping their private life truly private. Many fans were surprised to learn how much of his final decade had been devoted to fatherhood rather than fame. Iman's response to widowhood further reflected the depth of their bond. She spoke rarely, but when she did, her words emphasized partnership rather than mythology. She did not frame Bowie as a legend she married, but as a husband who cooked, laughed, and showed up. That framing mattered. It returned humanity to a relationship often flattened by celebrity worship. The truth behind David Bowie and Iman's relationship is not hidden because it was secretive, but because it rejected spectacle. Their love story challenged expectations without ever announcing itself as a statement. In a culture obsessed with visibility, they proved that dignity, longevity, and mutual respect can exist without constant validation. Their legacy is subtle but enduring. Sometimes the most powerful response to social scrutiny is not confrontation, but consistency. Serena Williams and Alexis Ohanian. When Serena Williams and Alexis Ohanian met by chance in Rome in 2015, few could have predicted how significant their relationship would become beyond celebrity culture. Williams was already regarded as one of the greatest athletes in modern history, holding multiple Grand Slam titles and reshaping women's tennis through dominance and discipline. Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit, came from the technology world, wealthy, influential, but largely removed from the lived experience of racial scrutiny. Their relationship would quietly bridge those two worlds. From the beginning, public attention focused not only on their professional achievements, but on what their marriage represented. They wed in 2017, the same year Serena won the Australian Open while pregnant, a medical and athletic milestone that stunned the sports world. Later that year, she faced life-threatening complications after childbirth, including pulmonary embolisms, details the couple later shared publicly to raise awareness about maternal health risks, particularly for Black women in the United States. Do we truly understand how race and healthcare intersect until we see it through real stories like this? Ohanian's role in the marriage gradually drew attention for a different reason. Unlike many high-profile partners, he spoke openly about learning from Serena's experiences with racial bias. In 2020, he resigned from Reddit's board and urged the company to replace him with a Black candidate, citing the responsibility he felt as a father to a biracial daughter. His actions were measurable, not symbolic, and marked a rare example of accountability within Silicon Valley leadership. Their family life became another focal point. Raising a daughter in the public eye forced conversations about representation, wealth, and safety. Serena, long criticized and policed for her body demeanor and success, now spoke as both a mother and an icon. Ohanian, in turn, positioned himself not as a savior, but as a listener, acknowledging that proximity to power does not equal understanding. The couple's visibility coincided with broader cultural shifts. According to U.S. Census data, interracial marriages have steadily increased over the past 2 decades, yet public acceptance remains uneven. Serena and Alexis did not present their relationship as a lesson, but it became one regardless, showing how partnership can evolve through empathy, education, and action. The truth behind their relationship is not found in fairy tale narratives or viral moments. It lies in the willingness to confront uncomfortable realities together. Their marriage demonstrates that love, when paired with awareness and responsibility, can become a platform for meaningful change without ever losing its human core. John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. When John Legend and Chrissy Teigen began dating in the mid-2000s, few imagined how fully their relationship would unfold in public view. Legend, a classically trained musician rooted in soul and R&B traditions shaped by Black American history, was steadily rising in the music industry. Teigen, a model with a sharp sense of humor and an unfiltered online presence, would later become one of the most recognizable personalities on social media. Together, they formed a partnership defined not by secrecy, but by exposure. They married in 2013 at a moment when social media was transforming celebrity culture. Unlike earlier interracial couples who guarded their private lives, Legend and Teigen allowed audiences to witness daily moments, parenthood disagreements, humor, and grief. This openness reshaped how a multiracial marriage could be seen not as a political statement, but as an ordinary family navigating extraordinary attention. Legend's music often intersected with social issues, while Teigen used her platform to challenge public expectations of women, marriage, and motherhood. Their willingness to speak openly reached a turning point in 2020 when they shared the devastating loss of their son due to pregnancy complications. The decision to disclose such a painful experience drew both support and criticism, but it also contributed to broader conversations about reproductive loss and emotional transparency. As an interracial couple, they also encountered racialized commentary, sometimes subtle, sometimes direct. Legend addressed systemic racism through advocacy and art, while Teigen faced scrutiny for her outspoken personality, revealing how women in mixed-race marriages are often judged differently. Their responses were rarely defensive. Instead, they leaned into dialogue, refusing to sanitize their reality for comfort. Over time, their family expanded, and with it, their influence. Parenting became a space where discussions of identity, privilege, and empathy naturally emerged. Rather than presenting themselves as role models, they showed imperfection, an approach that resonated with an older audience accustomed to more guarded celebrity narratives. The truth behind John Legend and Chrissy Teigen's relationship is not shocking because it is dramatic, but because it is visible. By allowing the public to see joy alongside vulnerability, they challenged long-standing expectations that interracial couples must either explain themselves or remain silent. Their marriage suggests a different path: authenticity as strength and honesty as a form of endurance in a culture that often prefers illusion over truth. Zoe Saldana and Marco Perego. Zoe Saldana and Marco Perego have never presented their marriage as a statement, yet it quietly unsettled long-standing expectations about race, gender, and power in celebrity relationships. Saldana, an actress of Afro-Latina heritage, rose to global prominence through some of the highest-grossing films in cinema history. Perego, an Italian visual artist and former athlete, entered the relationship with far less public visibility. From the beginning, their partnership reversed the usual hierarchy of fame. They married privately in 2013, avoiding press announcements and public spectacle. Not long after Perego made a decision that drew international attention, he adopted Saldana's surname. In many cultures, this act alone is seen as unconventional. Within the context of an interracial marriage involving a successful Black woman, it challenged deeply ingrained assumptions about masculinity, lineage, and ownership. The couple offered no justification beyond mutual respect. Saldana has spoken candidly about growing up navigating multiple identities: Dominican, Puerto Rican, Afro-descendant within an industry that often demands simplification. Marriage did not dilute that complexity. Instead, it reinforced her autonomy. Perego, for his part, rejected the expectation that a husband must dominate or define the family narrative. Their union became an example of equality practiced quietly rather than proclaimed loudly. Why does equality still feel disruptive when it's lived instead of announced? Together, they are raising 3 sons, choosing to expose them to multiple languages, cultures, and perspectives. Saldana has emphasized the importance of teaching her children respect for women and awareness of racial history, particularly in the United States. Rather than shielding them from these conversations, the couple integrates them into everyday life, treating identity as something to be understood, not avoided. Their relationship has remained largely free from scandal, which in itself is unusual for high-profile interracial marriages. By refusing constant visibility, they denied the public easy narratives. There are no viral declarations, no performative activism, only consistency. That restraint has allowed their partnership to endure, while many louder relationships fractured under scrutiny. The truth behind Zoe Saldana and Marco Perego's marriage is subtle but powerful. It demonstrates that progress does not always arrive through confrontation. Sometimes it appears in personal choices that quietly undermine outdated norms. Their relationship suggests that when equality is practiced daily without explanation, it becomes not controversial but inevitable. Seal and Heidi Klum. When Seal and Heidi Klum came together in the early 2000s, their relationship was instantly embraced as a symbol of modern romance. Seal, a British singer of Nigerian and Brazilian heritage, carried a voice shaped by hardship and resilience. Klum, a German supermodel at the peak of her career, embodied global fashion success. Their union, which began in 2003 and led to marriage in 2005, appeared to transcend boundaries of race, nationality, and background. From the outside, everything seemed almost theatrical. The couple became famous for renewing their wedding vows every year, often in extravagant ceremonies that captivated the media. These rituals were meant to reaffirm commitment, yet they also placed the marriage under constant public examination. What began as a celebration of love gradually turned into a spectacle shaped by expectation rather than reality. Seal legally adopted Klum's daughter from a previous relationship, forming a blended family that many viewed as progressive and aspirational. Together, they raised 4 children, presenting an image of stability at a time when interracial families were still underrepresented in mainstream media. Their visibility helped normalize what had once been considered unconventional, particularly for older audiences raised in more rigid social structures. Despite their public devotion, private challenges grew. Seal later described feeling trapped by the pressure to perform happiness, while Klum moved forward professionally at an accelerating pace. The very visibility that once strengthened their bond began to strain it. In 2012, they announced their separation, followed by divorce. The news surprised fans who had come to believe in the permanence of their story. The end of their marriage sparked a reassessment of how celebrity relationships are consumed. Their interracial union had been celebrated enthusiastically, but often without regard for the emotional labor required to sustain it under constant observation. Rather than a failure, their separation revealed the danger of turning real marriages into cultural symbols. The truth behind Seal and Heidi Klum's relationship is not that it collapsed, but that it was burdened by idealism. Their love was genuine, yet it existed within a framework that demanded perfection. In the end, their story reminds us that progress is not proven by appearances alone. Even groundbreaking relationships remain human, vulnerable to pressure, and deserving of privacy long after the spotlight fades. Taye Diggs and Idina Menzel. Taye Diggs and Idina Menzel met not through Hollywood glamour but on the Broadway stage in the mid-1990s while performing in Rent. Both were theater artists before they were household names, bonded by long rehearsals, limited pay, and shared ambition. Their connection grew in an environment where talent mattered more than image, yet once their relationship moved beyond the stage, it became subject to far broader scrutiny. They married in 2003 at a time when interracial marriages were legally accepted but still socially contested in many communities. Diggs, a black actor whose career was closely tied to representations of black masculinity, faced criticism that came not from tabloids but from within the very community that supported him. Some questioned his authenticity, suggesting that marrying a white woman distanced him from his cultural identity. These judgments were rarely direct, but they were persistent. Menzel, meanwhile, was building a reputation as one of Broadway's most powerful voices. As her career expanded, the dynamics of fame within the marriage shifted. Success brought opportunities, but also imbalance. Diggs later acknowledged that navigating public expectations around race success and partnership placed strain on their relationship pressures that were invisible to audiences focused only on appearances. Why do interracial relationships often face their harshest judgments from within familiar circles? Together, they welcomed a son, grounding their lives in parenthood while continuing demanding careers. For a time, they represented a version of interracial marriage rooted in intellect, artistry, and mutual respect, rather than spectacle. Unlike many celebrity couples, they avoided sensationalism, rarely discussing private challenges publicly. In 2013, after 10 years of marriage, they announced their divorce. The decision was framed not by scandal, but by the acknowledgement that personal growth can sometimes lead people in different directions. Diggs later spoke openly about the emotional aftermath, including how public discourse around his racial identity intensified after the separation, demonstrating that scrutiny does not end when a relationship does. The truth behind Taye Diggs and Idina Menzel's marriage lies in the complexity of identity. Their story reveals how interracial relationships can become battlegrounds for unspoken expectations, particularly for black men navigating visibility and loyalty in the public eye. Love may bring two people together, but it cannot always shield them from the cultural narratives imposed upon them. Their relationship remains significant, not because it lasted forever, but because it exposed a quieter truth. Acceptance is not universal even in progressive spaces, and the emotional cost of crossing invisible boundaries is often paid in private. Alfre Woodard and Roderick Spencer. Alfre Woodard and Roderick Spencer built one of the longest-lasting interracial marriages in American entertainment without ever placing it on display. When they married in 1983, the cultural climate was far less accommodating than it is today. Interracial relationships were legal, but social acceptance remained uneven, particularly for black women, whose personal lives were often scrutinized through both racial and gendered lenses. Woodard, already respected for her depth and discipline, as an actress understood the cost of visibility and chose restraint. Spencer, a writer and producer, never sought celebrity status. That imbalance in public recognition shaped their partnership in subtle but important ways. Rather than competing for the spotlight, the couple organized their lives around shared values, education, social justice, and family stability. They later adopted 2 children, expanding their commitment beyond traditional definitions of success or legacy. Woodard's career unfolded with intention. She took roles that carried moral and political weight, often portraying women navigating power, injustice, and dignity. Her marriage mirrored that same philosophy. There were no staged appearances, no curated narratives, and no attempts to define their relationship for public consumption. In an industry that often rewards visibility, their privacy was deliberate. Their longevity challenged assumptions often attached to interracial unions, particularly the belief that such relationships are fragile or temporary. Decades passed with little public commentary, and that silence spoke volumes. While many high-profile marriages dissolved under scrutiny, Woodard and Spencer maintained a stable home grounded in mutual respect rather than performance. Equally significant was their shared engagement with social causes. Both were involved in advocacy related to civil rights and education, reinforcing the idea that partnership can extend beyond romance into shared responsibility. Their marriage functioned as a private space from which public work could emerge, rather than the other way around. The truth behind Alfre Woodard and Roderick Spencer's relationship is not dramatic, but deeply instructive. It reveals that progress does not always announce itself. Sometimes it exists quietly, sustained over time through intention, trust, and aligned principles. Their union stands as evidence that interracial marriages do not need validation through attention. Endurance in this case became the message, and perhaps the most powerful one of all. Halle Berry and Olivier Martinez. When Halle Berry and Olivier Martinez began their relationship in the early 2010s, it was framed by the media as a story of renewal. Berry, one of the most successful black actresses in Hollywood history, had long carried the burden of being both highly visible and deeply scrutinized. Martinez, a French actor working largely outside the American studio system, appeared to offer distance from the pressures that had followed her throughout her career. They married in 2013, choosing a quiet ceremony that contrasted with the intense attention surrounding Berry's personal life. At the time, Berry was not only a global star, but also a symbol often unfairly cast as proof of progress in an industry still struggling with representation. Her marriage to a European partner was interpreted by some as an escape from Hollywood's racial and cultural constraints. The reality proved far more complicated. Cultural differences, language barriers, and demanding careers quickly surfaced as stressors. Berry later spoke about how difficult it was to sustain intimacy while balancing motherhood, professional obligations, and public expectation. The couple welcomed a son in 2013, adding emotional depth but also new pressures to an already fragile structure. Can love truly flourish when the world expects it to fix everything else? By 2015, the marriage ended in divorce. Unlike many celebrity separations, theirs was marked by prolonged legal disputes over finances and custody, extending the emotional toll well beyond the relationship itself. For Berry, the outcome reinforced a painful public narrative, one she has openly criticized, that disproportionately judges black women's romantic histories without context. The significance of their relationship lies not in its collapse, but in what it revealed. Interracial marriages are often portrayed as symbols of progress or healing, yet they are still subject to the same vulnerabilities as any partnership. When layered with fame, cultural displacement, and gendered expectations, those vulnerabilities can intensify rather than disappear. The truth behind Halle Berry and Olivier Martinez's relationship is that love alone cannot neutralize structural pressures. Their story challenges the illusion that crossing cultural boundaries automatically creates harmony. Instead, it reminds us that emotional sustainability requires more than intention. It demands compatibility, stability, and space away from public judgment. In acknowledging the limits of romantic idealism, their relationship offers a more honest narrative, one that values realism over fantasy and understanding over symbolism. Robert Pattinson and FKA Twigs. When Robert Pattinson and FKA Twigs began their relationship in 2014, it should have been unremarkable by Hollywood standards. Pattinson was one of the most recognizable actors in the world following the Twilight franchise. FKA Twigs, born Talia Barnett, was an acclaimed British musician and performance artist known for experimental sound movement and visual storytelling. Yet almost immediately their relationship became a flashpoint, not because of celebrity, but because of race. Unlike many interracial couples before them, the hostility they faced did not come primarily from institutions or laws, but from online spaces. FKA Twigs was subjected to an extraordinary volume of racist abuse from segments of Pattinson's fan base. The attacks included dehumanizing language, racial slurs, and comparisons rooted in colonial stereotypes. This harassment was not isolated. It was constant, public, and algorithmically amplified. Twigs later described the experience as deeply destabilizing. She spoke about how the abuse affected her sense of safety and self-worth despite her professional success. What made the situation especially revealing was that the hostility did not stem from tabloids or mainstream media, but from ordinary users empowered by anonymity. Racism, once enforced through policy and segregation, had found a new home in digital culture. Pattinson, for his part, expressed frustration and anger over the treatment of his partner, though his responses were often measured and restrained. The imbalance of scrutiny was unmistakable. Twiggs' identity was interrogated while Pattinson's remained untouched. The relationship exposed how interracial couples, particularly those involving black women, are often forced to absorb disproportionate emotional labor simply to exist publicly. Their engagement in 2015 did little to quiet the abuse. Instead, it intensified, reinforcing how visibility can amplify vulnerability rather than protection. By 2017, the couple had separated. No scandal, no betrayal, just exhaustion. Twiggs later clarified that the relationship itself was not the cause of the trauma, but the environment surrounding it. The cultural significance of their story lies in its timing. This relationship unfolded during a period when social media platforms were becoming central to public discourse, yet accountability mechanisms were minimal. Their experience foreshadowed broader conversations about online harassment, racism, and the psychological toll of constant exposure, topics that would later dominate cultural and political debate. The truth behind Robert Pattinson and FKA Twigs' relationship is not hidden romance, but exposed inequality. Their story demonstrates that progress in law and representation does not automatically translate into progress in behavior. Love, even between two globally successful artists, was not enough to shield against collective hostility. What remains is a stark reminder: modern racism often operates without uniforms or slogans. It thrives in comment sections, fandoms, and silence. And for those who live at the intersection of visibility and difference, the cost can be profound, even when the love itself is real. For decades, interracial celebrity relationships have reflected far more than romance. They have exposed America's unresolved tensions around race power and visibility. From hidden marriages that defied the law to modern unions, scrutinized by millions online, these couples reveal how progress often arrives unevenly. Laws changed headlines, softened, yet judgment merely shifted forms. Privacy once protected love. Today, exposure tests it. As audiences, we celebrate these stories as symbols of advancement, but do we truly confront the discomfort they reveal? On Legends of Black Excellence, the question remains: are these relationships proof of how far society has come, or evidence of how far it still has to go?